supposed to do. But I'm very happy to be here. I'm very grateful to the people who live in this house for opening their doors for all of us. And special gratitude to each and every one of you who have come from so many distant places to be with us this evening.
Microphone.
Louder.
May I tell a story? Long ago, approximately 5,000 years ago, there was a gathering like this. Since most ancient times till today, throughout history, throughout the world, sincere people seeking a higher understanding and experience in life than the ever-changing conditions of this world have come together in groups to hear inspiring, enlightening topics. There's a forest in India named Naimisharanya. Have any of you been there? I've been there. It's a beautiful forest. And because not so many people go there, it's one of the few holy places of India that haven't become very overcrowded and commercialized. It's on the banks of the Gomati River. Even today, hundreds and hundreds of ancient trees, very, very gigantic banyan trees especially, because nobody cut it for wood or anything. I went there once with several thousand devotees on a pilgrimage, and it was, even in the sun, there was so many gigantic banyan trees, and it was so clean, and there was just nobody else around, hardly, and all the devotees just chose a tree to sit under, to be in the shade, and we had a good sound system, and he spoke. But 5,000 years ago, when this historic assembly came there, they didn't have cell phones. There was over 80,000 sages, yogis, and saints who had gathered there. And they especially asked Sutta Goswami to speak to them. And he didn't have a sound system. Still, everyone could hear. How was that? Somehow or other. In those days, people had strong voices. And strong ears, too. And these great sages, these great rishis, pundits, scholars, they had deep compassion for humanity. That's why they gather. People from thousands of miles, from the Himalayan mountains, from Kanyakumari in the very south, people from other nations, they came to this special conference to discuss how to deal with the problems that were coming in the world. They saw, as time was passing, people were becoming more and more obsessed with ego, greed, envy, lust, arrogance. People were not finding satisfaction within their own hearts. So they needed to exploit more and more material resources to try to enjoy through their mind and senses. And because there's a limited amount of resources, there will be fighting. There will be hatred, even among family members, even between different divisions of a community, among races, among nations. There would be wars, even in the name of religion and God, what to speak of nationalism. You see, these people were all very empowered. They could feel and see into the future. And they cared. Most of them were very enlightened souls. They weren't content to just be enlightened. Because the quality of an enlightened soul is paradukkha dukkhi. That other people's suffering cause me pain. And other people's happiness gives me happiness. So this was an incredible conference. What are we going to do to try to help humanity? Not only humanity, but all living beings in this situation. We see it happening and we see it's coming more and more. And because they had great wisdom, they knew that unless we approach the cause of a problem, we cannot significantly solve a problem. If a person has boils on their body, how many of you have had boils on your body? They're very painful. And sometimes they just come again and again and again. And you could treat the boil and get some relief. But if you have a disease in your blood, they're going to keep coming again and again. So to treat the cause, the problem in the blood, will solve the boil problem. But in today's world, people are so much trying to solve the symptoms of problems without understanding why is it happening. So they came together to discuss solutions, real solutions to the root causes of the problems of human society. Why did they choose Sutta Goswami to speak to them? Because they were all very enlightened people. But even though they were enlightened people, still they were confused what to do. Because it's such a problem. Enlightened people are humble people. They don't claim to know everything. But they know that God knows everything. And they know that those who love God, they can reveal to us. So they all approached Sutta Goswami, who was a very humble, very gentle, very devoted person. Because he was at a similar gathering recently. I hope this is not getting too complicated here. But the gathering he was at was an event. The place is still there today. It's a great place of pilgrimage. It's called Sukata. Or Sukatal. Sukatal. There was a king. His name was Parikshit. He was an emperor of all the land. He had a very pure heart. A good leader, in the standard was in those days, was to be the servant of one's praja, which is a Sanskrit word which means one's children. One sees not only all races of humanity, but one sees all species of life as one family. Bhagavad Gita tells Sarva Yoni Shakontaya Morataya Sambhavantaya Tasam Brahma Mahajoni Aham Bija Pratapita. This is Krishna speaking. Krishna is an avatar. He's the supreme being who has descended on this earth. It says all living beings are born of material nature. And the seed-giving father of all material beings is that one supreme God. Aham bija pratapita. I am the seed-giving father and mother of all beings. So when we understand we all have the same source, we all have the same mother and father, we're all brothers and sisters. Whether we agree with it or not, whether we can identify or understand it or not, it is truth. But how can we all be from the same mother and father? We have different colors, we have different shapes, we have different forms. These little birds, we don't see it. Highland Park Hospital, birds being born from human ladies. How is this possible? Because within the body of every living being is a living force, consciousness. It's that conscious force that's seeing through the eyes and hearing through the ears and tasting through the tongue and smelling through the nose. It's that conscious force which is our true identity. In the West, sometimes called the spirit or the soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, sometimes called the Atma or the Jiva. Nijayate mriyate vakadachit nayambut bhavatapanabhuya. That for the soul, there is neither birth nor death. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. It never dies. It's eternal. That's who we are. Mamayavam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatan. And all spirit souls, all living beings that are situated within the heart, wherever there's life, even in a tree, even in a plant, wherever there's life, there's the presence of a sacred part of God. Unless we recognize it within ourselves, we cannot recognize it in others. the deepest, most inclusive and satisfying form of love can only be found within our own hearts. And when it's found there, it's expressed everywhere. Because when we recognize our own eternal soul, when we recognize our own relationship with the all-attractive, all-beautiful, supremely sweet, supreme being we call Krishna, then we see that every living being is a part of Krishna. We can't help but being loving toward them. We may not love what people do, but we can dislike the disease, but we don't dislike the diseased. Because we're all related, we're all connected. There was a little boy named Prahlad. He was only 5 years old. His father was a different kind of king. And he sent him to a school to learn the type of politics where you divide and conquer. It's about us and them. Those who don't have power want to get power, and those who have power want to keep power. So they were teaching him all the most advanced, incredibly sophisticated methods and technologies to get power. Friends and enemies. Prahlad Maharaj, because he found love of God in his heart, he was not interested. These are grown-up teachers with the highest degrees. And he's 5 years old. And he's telling his teachers, "You're like children, why don't you grow up?" Like little children, they fight over toys. The toys don't really mean much of anything, and the parents look and say, "Why are you so foolish fighting over these little things?" So little Prahlad, 5 years old, is seeing armies, militaries, scholars, fighting over so many things, friends and enemies, I and mine, me and you. He said, why don't you grow up? The Bhagavad Gita tells that unless we find our happiness, our enlightenment within ourselves, we cannot find it anywhere in this world. And if we find it within ourselves, we can actually experience it everywhere in this world. Because really the world is like a mirror reflecting our own state of consciousness. Everyone, everything. So this king, Parikshit, he made a small mistake. He really lived in such a way to try to protect, give rights to all of his citizens, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Because if we really love someone, we want to love them as a whole. If somebody's suffering physically, we want to help them. If someone's suffering emotionally, which is a deeper type of suffering for many, we want to help them. But the most significant type of suffering is the spiritual crisis. Because by the power of time, everything's changing. You really can't hold on to anything. 1 second ago is gone. Can anyone hold on to it? Even if you have billions of dollars, you cannot buy back 1 second that's lost. Everything's changing. But the soul's eternal. The root cause of all problems really is a disconnection of our consciousness from our own true self. And it's because of that disconnection that there's so much anxiety, so much mental illness, so much fighting. So much pain. So Parikshit Maharaj was really trying to help everybody, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He was willing to give his life to anyone to help them. But he made a little mistake. And a young boy who had some supernatural powers, he was a Brahmin, he cursed the king to die in 7 days. And in those days, curses worked. Now anyone can curse you and you just say, thank you very much. Go on with your life. And he cursed the king to die. The king was still a young man. He had a family. He could have retaliated. He was a very enlightened person himself. But he didn't retaliate. He took it as God's grace, as Krishna's grace. Rakhe Krishna, Mare Krishna, Mare Rakhe Krishna. That if God wants to protect us, we have nothing to fear. So he was very serious, but he saw this as a wonderful opportunity. This is a symptom of wisdom. Whatever situation comes, we see it as an opportunity to grow. That's true greatness. Whether it's a nice thing, we don't get caught up in the nice thing and become all proud and frivolous. And when things are very tragic, we don't lose sight of the purpose of life. So he saw, I have 7 days to live. This is wonderful. It's a wake-up call. Because everything's going to be taken away from me. My family, my position, my skills. Only 7 days. All that's going to be left is my spiritual nature. So he put on very, very simple clothes that he called a kopan, just a simple little cloth around his waist, and left his magnificent palace and all of his family, arranged for his son to be the next king. That's the way it was in those days. And he went to the bank of the river Ganges. And there, thousands and thousands of yogis and rishis and sages and saints all came to be with him for those 7 days. And he asked all, and some of these people were the most celebrated personalities. Ram's Guru, Vasishta, Vishwamitra, Narada Muni, the great sage of Prahlad and Dhruva, and so many others, Vyasadeva, the compiler of Vedanta, and Vedas, so many. He asked them a simple question. He asked them 3 questions. What is the most important occupation for all living beings. He especially used the word dharma. Dharma means occupation. Dharma also means religion. Dharma also means nature, one's nature. What is the supreme dharma? The supreme occupation for everyone. What is truly our duty that's common to everything? Second question. There are so many religions, and so many religious teachers, and so many scriptures. Even in those days it was like that. Throughout the world, and so many interpretations. I don't have time to study them all. I only have 7 days. What is the essence? The essential common goal of every great true spiritual teacher and every great scripture? The third question. What is the duty of a person who's about to die? That applies to all of us. So among all those people who were assembled, every one of them could have given incredible speeches. But they had to decide among themselves one person to speak. There was a boy, 16 years old. His name was Shukadev. Everyone understood he is actually the most qualified person to speak. So they gave him the special seat. And he was so humble. He just asked for everybody's blessings and everyone's mercy. He answered those 3 questions by speaking all day, every day for 7 days. And that dialogue was written down in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Today it's 18,000 verses. One of the people who happened to be at that meeting was Sutta Goswami. And when he came to Naimisharanya and the 80,000 sages were gathered around, they knew he was there. Please explain to us what you heard. And Sutta Goswami, he summarized the answer to all 3 questions with 1 verse. He spoke 18,000 verses, but one particular verse summarized all the questions that are really necessary. Would you like to hear that verse?
Yeah.
Savai pungsam parodharmo yato bhaktirokshajaya hoitaki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme dharma, the supreme religion, the supreme occupation, the essence of all knowledge is that which awakens from within one's heart. Love and the will to serve with love, the Supreme Being. Such loving service must be unmotivated by egoism or selfishness and uninterrupted by all the inevitably changing circumstances to truly satisfy the self. When you water the root of a tree, the nourishment of that water extends to every part of the tree. The flowers, the leaves, the branches, the twigs, the trunk. So similarly, when we actually awaken from our hearts that unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure love for Krishna, for the Supreme Being, then naturally that love extends toward everyone. And that love is forever. There is nothing that can take that love away from us. It's there. Nothing can take it away from you even now. But we forgot where it is. That's the human spiritual crisis of the world. We forgot where it is. When we connect with that love, it is expressed through compassion. Compassion is truly the test of an enlightened person. Compassion and humility, which makes one fearless. Parikshit Maharaj he was transcendentally happy hearing this great message. You see, to love in its true sense is to be in that state where there is no selfishness. Because we're so connected with the self, we're self-satisfied. And then our greatest pleasure is in giving. And it is within us. There are so much talks about nuclear bombs, and there are so many nuclear bombs, and they're pointed practically everywhere. Whether you're in India, or whether you're in America, or whether you're in Russia, or whether you're in Africa. And we don't have that much control over who's going to push the buttons. But the reality is, even if the most gigantic and destructive nuclear bomb were to fall directly on top of your head, it couldn't hurt the soul. It couldn't disturb your love for God. It couldn't disturb your compassion for others, because it's transcendental. It's spiritual. It's not affected by material stuff. But when we place our happiness on all this material stuff, then there's a lot to be afraid of. Not to speak of bombs, car crashes, and there's so many diseases in people's bodies. But nothing can take away the prema, the love of God that's within our hearts. But because of distraction, we have forgotten. We have lost connection with it. A simple heart is one that is well-wishing. My Guru Srila Prabhupada, one time devotees were working so hard to build a temple that he wanted them to build. And they're working and working because you have to get funds. And then you have to, so many obstacles come any project you have in this world. So Prabhupada told the devotees, actually, we don't need temples. We're happy to live under a tree. Just by chanting Krishna's names, Radha's names, God has many names. Just by chanting God's names, having a little prasad, spiritual food, and being with each other is all we need. If you can't be satisfied with a little, you can never be satisfied with a lot. Because the more you have, the more you need. And the more you need, the more you want. Trying to be happy through material acquisition is like trying to make a fire happy by putting fuel on it. It just gets hungrier and hungrier. But our real happiness is there. This journey within. When we find it there, we see the essence of all scriptures and all religions. We see the essence of creation. We see the essence in all beings. And it's actually beautiful. It can never be taken away. But that's our true wealth. True wealth is peace and happiness, and that's something that is a state of consciousness. It's expressed through our character, through our integrity, and through our simplicity. Duplicity is a symptom of an empty heart. There was one of my dear friends. He was just a teenager when I first met him. There's a city in India called Belgaum in the state of Karnataka. And I happened to be giving a lecture in a college there. And in India, did any of you ever give a lecture in a college in India? You have to be prepared. How much time do I have?
It's not
A
limited.
lot of time. All the time.
Okay, I'm going to tell another story and then get back to this story. And then get back to the original story. So I'm just going to tell one little story that shows how you have to be ready for anything when you're speaking in a college in India. I was giving a talk in an auditorium with about 400 students and professors at a college that was specifically training students to be accountants. Certified accountants, public accountants, whatever, all kinds of accountants. And I'm not good at accountants. I don't have money or bank balance or anything. But I gave a talk there. I was on a stage. It was a very beautiful auditorium. And everyone listened. Then I asked if there was any questions. Somebody near the back raised his hand. And I was so foolish, I called on him. He stood up. a very large man. And as soon as he stood up, hundreds of people said, "Ooh." And I realized that this person was very popular. He was a very charismatic, dynamic person that everyone knew. He began to scream at me. He said, "You are a cheater. You are a liar. You are a hypocrite. You have simply come to mislead us. You are a cheater." He said, "If everybody became a Swami like you, who would do the banking? Who would grow the food? Who would do the education? Who would run the governments? Therefore, you have come to cheat us. I reject everything you speak." But he said it in such a way, he got a standing ovation. Everyone was clapping and howling. They all stood up. They were going, and I was all alone on stage, just standing there. They were clapping and cheering for several minutes. So during that several minutes, I had time. Everyone was looking at me, but I had time to pray to Krishna to save me. So, like, Krishna, I was just standing there praying, "Krishna, please give me words." Give me words to speak, because I don't know what to say now. So when finally the clapping ended, everyone was looking like, "You are defeated." I think it's the nature of a lot of students that they like to see their teachers disgraced. Would you like to hear my answer?
Yes, absolutely.
I said, "Dear sir, what if everyone in the world became an accountant like you? Who would do the banking? Who would grow the food? Who would do the educating? Who would run the governments? If everyone in the world was an accountant like you, the entire world would be unemployed because no one would need an accountant." I said, "The human body is like the social body. Every part of the body has a unique function. The brain cannot do what the heart does. The heart cannot do what the pancreas does. The pancreas cannot do what the lungs do. The lungs cannot do what the kidneys do. The kidneys cannot do what the knees do. The knees cannot do what the thyroid does. And the thyroid can't do what the toes do." Does any part of the body think that I'm more important than every other part? Each part is a different shape, a different color, a different size, and a different function. But a healthy body is when every part of the body recognizes and appreciates what's being offered by every other part, and they're united. They don't just become one, they become one in their purpose. If you drop something on your toe, even your littlest of all toes, every part of your body, every limb, every organ is going to be generating blood to try to help that toe to heal. It's not that the brain says, who cares about you? Right? The stomach could say, if not for me providing nourishment to all the other parts of the body, then you're all going to get weak and die. You are depending on me. If the stomach thinks like that, the stomach's going to die. Because the stomach's depending on the hands to give food to it. And the mouth to chew it. Every part is depending on every other part. That's what community means. Where we appreciate the big, the small, everything. Because greatness is not in quantity. The greatness of a person's life and efforts is really based on the sincerity of their intent and the integrity of their actions and words and their purpose. If there's a high purpose, it's something great. So I said like that. So similarly, like the human body, the social body, there's a need for bankers. There's a need for farmers. There's a need for educators. There's a need for government people. There's a need for scientists. There's a need for accountants. And there's also a need for little swamis like me. We all have something to contribute. And when we actually have a contact, a connection with our own souls, Jaiva Dharma, and when we actually are performing our duties, whatever they may be, we may be in business, we may be in technology, we may be in medicine, we may be mothers or fathers, we may be students, whatever our role is, if we're being motivated by that Jaiva Dharma, by that love of God that's within us. Pray. If we perform it with compassion, with respect, then we're truly making the greatest contribution to the world. So I said to that gentleman, I said, you be an accountant, I may be a Swami, we could all do wonderful things if we're united spiritually. I'm humble to tell you this, but after I said that, I got a longer and louder than you did. They stood up and they were clapping and they were howling and they were cheering. And the man that asked the question, he raised his arms like this, and then he went like this. So he was happy. So you have to be careful when you're giving talks in Indian college. So I was at this Indian college in Belgaum, and afterward, this one really simple, sweet young man, he's a teenager, he had very large eyes, and he came up and he just thanked me. And not long after that, I lived in an ashram in Mumbai, he came to live in the ashram in Mumbai. And at our ashram, we have so many very, very scholarly leaders, people who have very high PhDs and master's degrees in technology, and they know Sanskrit. There's great orators, great researchers, But he was just a very simple person. He would just do simple little things. So he never had much prestige. He was never recognized very much. But everyone liked him because he was so humble and so respectful, so sincere. And when I traveled around India doing so many different organization things and talking, he often came with me because he was just such an easy person to get along with because he didn't have any detectable false ego. And as I said, he was just one of the simple people in the ashram among so many prominent people. After some years, he decided to get married. He was a brahmachari or a monk for maybe about 8 years. He decided to get married. And we have a hospital in Mumbai, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. So he got a job there. Simple job. But whatever he did it so thoroughly, so much attention to every little detail. He wasn't so skilled, but he was really sincere. This is about 12 years ago. One of my very best friends, his name is Radhanath Swami. He was one of the greatest spiritual leaders of the world. He had cancer. And he was in his last... I was giving a lecture somewhere in America, and he called me and he told me, my doctor told me I have 3 days to live. He said, I'd really appreciate if we could meet before I die. So I just left everything and went to that place. He was in Pennsylvania, a place called Gita Nagari. I went to see him. He was laying in his bed. He had one leg amputated. He was emaciated thin. He had tumors all over his body. And when I left this event where I was giving lectures, I said, I have to go. And when I left that event, about 100 people left also to come to see him when they heard he was going to leave us within a few days. So he was sitting in his room, and there was about 50, 60 people in that room. He was so full of light, so full of happiness. People were asking him questions, and he was answering the questions. He had to be picked up to put on this chair, and he was just sitting there in this chair, and he had to be picked up to be moved to do anything. Everyone in the room was weeping, crying. I never saw these people like this, because I knew a lot of the people. Some of them had really hard lives. Some of them were very bitter people. But they were crying. They were coming out of the room and falling down and saying, my life has changed forever. I went back in the room after everyone left. I said, I've known you for 30 years. I never saw you do that to people. How did you do that? You affected their hearts so deeply, they'll never be the same. So much love, so much deep wisdom and compassion was coming out of him. He was smiling. His eyes were glistening. He said, "This disease is such a blessing because I want to help others. I know I'm beyond death. I know I'm the soul, but I want to help others. If I lived another 50 years, I could not affect people as much as I can in this situation. Because they know I'm going to die. They're so open to me." He said, "It's a blessing because I can serve so well." So I had a very busy schedule, and I only had one day to stay with him. I saw him, I spent nice time with him. The next morning I was going to go because they had lectures at colleges and lectures in different organizations and companies. And I went to his bed to say goodbye. He was laying down. I sat in a little chair next to him. But before I could say anything, he just looked at me and took my hand and said, "Please stay here. I want to die in your arms." I said, "I promise you, as long as you're alive, I will be with you." He was supposed to die in 3 days. He lasted 8 weeks. So I had to cancel the whole summer and everything. But it was wonderful. We would meet hours every day, and when we were together, we didn't talk about politics. Because when you're about to die, or your dearest friend is about to die, you want to speak about what's really important in life. We made an agreement that everything we speak, every word, will be for the purpose of uplifting our consciousness closer to God. And that's what we did. It was such a beautiful gift. I never could understand. Well, I could theoretically understand, but I could never really comprehend how deep love could be between two people until two people were exclusively trying to help each other love God. It was so deep, it was so transcendental, it was so profound. One day, he was propped in a little chair and I was sitting in a chair in front of him. And that day there was so much pain in his body. The pain would kind of get severe, and then some days it wasn't so severe, but this was at the peak of its severity. His entire body was trembling with pain. And I was trying to talk to him, telling him stories about Krishna and great saints and Lord Chaitanya. That's what we would talk about, and we would give our realizations, and especially our realizations about our concern for others. But on this day I could see he was in so much pain he just couldn't focus. So I started to chant this Maha Mantra. I said, Hare, just like this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Continuously. And he was chanting with me. And suddenly, he smiled. Such a smile. His smile, it lit up the entire room. It was a smile of true ecstasy. And I never saw him cry because of the pain. But as he was smiling, his eyes were glistening and tears were pouring from his eyes in happiness. And he held my hand and we were chanting for about 15 minutes together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then he said to me, "It doesn't get any better than this." And then he said, "We're there. We're there." And I said, "Where?" He said, "We're in the spiritual world." He said, he was so enthusiastic. "I would not trade my place for anyone else in the world. At this moment," he said, "I am tasting the sweetness of God's name." And I'm feeling the sweetness and the beauty of Krishna. He said, there's no death. He said, this moment, what Krishna's name has done to me, I would not trade this moment for anything else or anyone else in the world. He was completely honest and serious. He was truly in the presence of the Lord. He was in ecstasy. So during that 8 weeks, that's one little example out of so many of our interactions together. But while I was with them, I got a call on the phone from this student that I was telling you about, Stoka Krishna, who was now working at our hospital. He was married. His wife was pregnant with their first little child. And he called me and told me he was just diagnosed with the most deadly, aggressive cancer known to man. He said, "I only have 2 weeks to live." And he was such a dear friend of mine. I wanted to go be with him, but I couldn't, because I was with Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. So we spoke on the phone, and he was completely blissful. It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to die." It was like, he said, "Parikshit Maharaj only had 7 days to prepare. I have 2 weeks." He was excited. So I spoke to him, prayed for him. And some weeks later, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I was sitting at his side holding his hand, and there was over 100 people in the room chanting, and he left the world. It was beautiful. It was the most beautiful, graceful departure. Then I went back to Mumbai. By the time I went back to Mumbai, it was about a month and a half later. And Stoka Krishna was still alive. And he was laying Walked him down to hospital. He was laying in a little hospital bed. He was kind of paralyzed from his waist down. He was emaciated thin because he could hardly eat. But his eyes were full of happiness. And while he was laying on his deathbed, his wife had a little baby girl. And he brought that little baby girl. She brought the baby to see her father. And he's laying there looking at his little girl, knowing that he's never going to be able to see her grow up. He was only 31 years old. But I'll never forget a conversation I had with him. If a person's 31 years old, who's really been a good person, a simple, kind-hearted, simple-hearted good person all his life, dedicated himself in God's service, people would ask, why is God doing this to me? That's what he asked me. He said, why is Krishna doing this to me? He said, I never deserved to be in the company of such wonderful, spiritually enlightened people. But God gave me that. I got to chant God's names hours and hours every day for years. I didn't deserve that. I got to read the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar of Devotion, so many great scriptures, and I got to be in hundreds of classes, thousands of classes, and thousands of kirtans, and I got to do so much seva, so much service. I didn't deserve that. My whole life is gift after gift after gift, which I could never have deserved. I'm just so grateful. I'm so happy. I had so much of a beautiful life. He wasn't saying, I just got married, I just have a little baby, I'm only 31 years old, why do I have to die? That didn't cross his mind. He was totally grateful for all the gifts he had in his life. And that's the way he always was. He never stopped smiling. Some of the other monks who live in our ashram, the scholars and the very, very charismatic and powerful people, great saints, when they saw him always smiling, they were thinking he must just be pretending. Nobody could be that transcendental. When he got that disease in June, he lived till the end of January. And he never stopped smiling. And all the other monks and everyone in our community and everybody in our congregation realized this person is truly enlightened. He's truly a saint. He only saw good things. He was always grateful. It was a lesson for all of us. What is greatness? People came to him to try to cheer him up. And by the time they left the room, he had solved all the problems. They came, he was cheering everyone else up. he just loved to hear about Krishna, hear about the lives of the saints. He couldn't hear enough. He loved to bring people. People would come in and he'd say, please let us read together. And he couldn't talk much. But he was in our temple on one of the holiest days of the year, the appearance day of Advaita Acharya. Over 100 people around him chanting. People from Vrindavan just came from that day and were singing for him. And he was smiling. Simple living, high thinking. A simple heart is a heart that really seeks its meaning, its purpose, and its fulfillment in the simple things of life. The simplest thing in life is what religion or yoga is meant for us to realize. That happiness is within our own hearts. Love is within our own hearts. God, Krishna, Surita Sarvadehinam, our most intimate, loving friend. We are never separated. Thank you very much. Kishori Devi, is that what I'm supposed to do? Should we end or have questions or anything else?
If you questions, if you have a time, you can.
Does anyone have a question?
Not in the anthology, I hope.
This,
I don't know if this question is too deep, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Is there one Purusha and many Prakritis, or is there one Prakriti and many Purushas?
there are various definitions of the same Sanskrit words, sometimes utilized in different contexts. But Purusha means person. And God is the supreme Adi Purusha, the supreme Purusha. And in one sense, everything that's emanating from that, there is one Purusha, there is one God. But Parashya Shaktir Vivadayava Shruyate, but from that one supreme source, that one supreme person, that one supreme origin of everything, there's limitless variegatedness. There's limitless jivas, or parts and parcel people. We are all jivas. And then there's the entire creation of material energy. They're all coming from that one Purusha. So yes, there's one supreme Purusha, but there's limitless expansions of that one Purusha. That is the entire creation of existence, spiritual and material worlds. Krishna tells in Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvata. It says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything, everyone emanates from me. See, I didn't even get a standing ovation. That was a harder question. Any other questions?
Maharaj, many of us already know about the holy name. Maybe it will be beneficial to hear from you the greatness of chanting Hare Krishna mantra. If you can, elaborate on the topic, and we would like to hear it from you. How much mercy is there in the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra?
Lord Chaitanya taught Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Satya Kabu Nois Ravanadi Suti Jeti Koriya Yudoi. That Krishna Prema, love for God, is within the heart of every being. By associating with people who are aspiring to love, and by chanting these divine mantras, these divine names, this love is awakened within. Ram Nama Kari Bahuda Nija Sarava Shaktis Tatrapitani Amita Smaranena Kala. That the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna, has many, many names that have been revealed in various religions, through various scriptures, through various saints throughout the world's histories. There are many names of God. Jehovah, Allah, Govinda, Krishna, Ram. And in each and every one of these names, the Lord is present. The Lord has invested His transcendently divine potencies. By sincerely learning the art, the science of chanting these names with the proper attitude, we get the highest liberation. Kali Kali, Kali Kale Namarupe Krishna Avatar. In this age that we're living in called Kali, the Supreme incarnates within the name. Yeyatamam prapadyante. This means that as we approach the Lord reveals. If we chant these divine mantras, this Hare Krishna mantra, with genuine sincerity, with humility, with attention, in a regulated way, taking it very seriously, we become purified. Once, a great scholar asked Haridas Thakur, who was a very great devotee. He was coming in India, he was coming from what was considered a very low and kind of discarded part of society. Some considered him an untouchable. But he was constantly chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. And therefore, he was the most enlightened, compassionate sage. There's entire books about his life. So once he was challenged, what is the result of chanting God's names? And he said the result of chanting God's names is it awakens our love for God. And the person said, what about liberation? Mukti. Haridas Thakur said, you can get mukti by chanting the holy names. You can get liberation, salvation, but that's just a small byproduct of love of God. Liberation means to be free of suffering, to be free of pain, to be free of birth and death. But prema is infinitely deeper than even that. That's where we actually connect to the true anandam buddhivardhanam, the ecstasy of the soul, where we can actually realize and experience Krishna's infinite, endless love for us, and our endless, infinite love for Krishna. And that includes everyone. Haridas Thakur said that's the true blessing that we can gain by chanting God's names. And it's very simple. Even a child can chant. In this day and age, Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam, it's the most recommended form of yoga. It's the deepest and most profound form of meditation. This is according to the Vedic scriptures. The word mantra, man means the mind, and trayate means to deliver. To free the mind of all anxieties, to free the mind of all misconceptions, to free the mind of the 6 enemies that are within us. Selfish lust, anger, envy, greed, arrogance, and illusion. It's all like, these are like dust that's covering the mirror of our mind. You're standing next to that nice mirror, and you can see yourself, but we can see you. And you look very nice. But if that mirror was totally covered with years and years of dust, all you'd see is the dust. So the mind is like that mirror. The mind is supposed to reflect the infinitely beautiful nature of God in the soul. But when it's covered by the dust of all this material attachments, then all we see is that. And we just think through the mind, the soul is looking through the mind, and instead of seeing its own true self, it's seeing, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm black or white or red or yellow or brown, I'm a human or I'm an insect, I'm from the east or the west. My Guru Srila Prabhupada used to say, even, or I'm a Hindu or a Muslim or a Jew or a Jain or a Sikh or a Parsi or a Muslim or a Jew or an agnostic or an atheist. We're identifying with so many things. It's all dust. We have duties according to our particular species, according to our roles. We have duties. But that's not who we are. We're eternally lovers of God. So the chanting of the holy names is declared in the Vedic scriptures and other scriptures as well to be the most simple and effective way of cleansing the mirror of the heart, of the mind. And as it's cleansed, it removes all these unwanted anarthas, and gradually more and more we see ourselves. And then we see the whole world in relationship to our true self. And that's beautiful. In the Vedic literatures there are many mantras. Kali Santirana Upanishad tells Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Iti Sodasakam Nam Nam Kalikal Nashanam. Says this 32 syllable, 16-word mantra is called the Maha Mantra. And there's no more effective medicine in this age of Kali than the chanting of this mantra. And it's declared the Maha Mantra because all other mantras, and every mantra is powerful and every mantra is divine, but all other mantras are considered to be included in this Maha Mantra. And Krishna, who came in this age of Kali as Lord Chaitanya, he taught this. That whatever religion one is, if one sincerely chants the names of God with the proper service attitude, one can get love of God and illumination. But he particularly chose the prominent mantra to be the Maha Mantra. And we are following in his lineage. So we are promoting this chanting of Maha Mantra. It is beyond any sectarian considerations. And actually, it's the most... Lord Chaitanya said, he wrote, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtana. It is the foremost blessing and benediction upon humanity that simply by chanting we can attain what the heart and the soul are truly desiring. I pray. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it is very inspiring to hear this explanation from a person like you. So we all appreciate the words. Thank you.
Is there one more question?
I have a question.
Yes,
I really liked the way you compared the whole world and all people in the world to human body, and how every part of us, if we all come together and work together, we have a healthy body, right? How do you know that you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing for the universe? You using your potential to bring the best from you to offer the best to the world. And how do you know when to change and to move on? You know, the way you're saying the liver cannot be lungs, but we as humans, we can move ourselves, we can change. How do you know when you need to change and when you find the right place to be?
It begins with asking that question. Because you are sincerely inquiring in this way, you are on the right path. In the Bible, Lord Jesus spoke, "Seek and ye shall find." Manusyanam sahasreshu kashchit yatati shedaya yatatamapi shedhanam kashchanam veti tattvata. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, out of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, hardly one really asks that question sincerely. Atato brahma jigyasa. The beginning of spiritual life is when we truly ask that question. Who am I? Really, who am I? What is the true purpose of life? And how do I approach that true purpose of life? When we sincerely and earnestly ask these questions, then God helps us. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridaya arjuna tishtati. The Lord is within our hearts. And when we are sincere, the Lord, God guides us to the right people who can help us to make that inner connection with Him. Guides us to the right books by which we can learn how to live in that harmony. We don't have to make anything up. Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful scripture, and it's teaching just that principle. People from all religions for thousands of years have found great direction from the Bhagavad Gita. It's teaching us how to live every aspect of our life in harmony with the soul, in harmony with the God, in harmony with each other. So if we are sincere, we will go to those people who really inspire us to go deeper. The Lord is within our hearts. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyokam tam yena mamupayantete. In the Gita, Krishna tells, one who worships me with love and serves me with love, from within the heart I reveal how that person can come to me. So in the association of sincere, devoted people who are on the path, we can learn the art of living according to our natural role in society, in harmony with Krishna. And Bhakti Yoga, by hearing about Krishna, by associating with devotees of the Lord, by chanting the names of the Lord, and by performing our natural duties within this world, in that spirit. Some of the greatest saints in history were housewives. I know some of the most enlightened people in the world who are business women and businessmen, doctors, lawyers, farmers, accountants, builders, construction people. Garbage collectors. That's kind of what I do. And swamis, monks. It's not about changing our position, it's just about changing our consciousness. Does that kind of answer your question?
I like that answer.
Huh?
I like that answer. This how to change consciousness and spirit will guide you to the right place.
I like your answer. Thank you very much.